Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And today I'm joined by Vicky. Say hello, Vicky.
Hello there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to just sort of sit back and let you start your story and hand over to you. Take it away.
Thank you very much. My name's Vicky Henderson, and my story, if we take it as a prologue, I have struggled with depression my entire adult life and been medicated on and off for most of that time. And apart from that, life was pretty good. I lived in the French Alps. I did a lot of walking in the summer, up really quite big mountains. I was training to put crampons on and go up onto the snow. I did a lot of skiing. I'm an advanced skier. I've skied all my life, every weekend in the winter, and really life was pretty good. And then driving home from work one day in January 2017, I was parked in a queue, I was in a queue at a roundabout, and the guy behind me failed to stop and drove into the back of me, but not at high speed. I mean, it was the most minor car crash you can think of. There was damage to my car. I had a bit of pain in my leg because I had my foot on the pedal, and in one of my arms because I'd had my hand on the steering wheel. But we exchanged details. I drove home. Everything was fine. I worked for the next 3 weeks. And then one Saturday morning, I woke up and I put my legs on the ground and I realised I couldn't stand up.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And I was a little bit like, oh, this is slightly strange. So luckily my parents lived not that far away. So I called them and said, you're going to have to get into the flat. I never left my keys in the back of the door, luckily. So they got into the flat and we went up to the doctor. And the doctor said, well, he said, for the purposes of the car accident, this is whiplash. He said, for the purposes of you, this is fibromyalgia. So really unusual, that because the French are very forward thinking and they would prefer to medicate you and treat it as fibromyalgia whilst getting a diagnosis rather than actually ignoring it until it's really bad. Right. So straight away, he gave me what he believed was the right medication, and sent me off home. I had to go to my parents' house. For the next month, was essentially bedridden. I couldn't hold a book because it hurt my hands. I couldn't listen to music because it hurt my ears. I couldn't watch television because it hurt my eyes. I couldn't sleep because my body hurt. It felt like I had ants in all my muscles moving around. Okay. So basically, I was, that was me for a month. And I was a little bit like, this is horrific. I was absolutely exhausted. I did a lot of sleeping, inverted commas, trying to sleep, but it was quite difficult. And then after a month, I kind of felt that, it was time to have a go at work again because I don't like giving up. I went back to work for a whole day and fell in a heap and couldn't do it. So they decided to send me back to work part-time. So I would drive 20 minutes from where I live down the mountain to my job, and I'd work for 4 hours, hopefully. Yeah. And then I'd drive home again, and about 10 minutes home, I would probably my blood pressure would plummet. I'd feel absolutely awful, and I would have to go to sleep. I could no longer drive. So the traffic wardens got to know me quite well, the crazy English girl sleeping in her car.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
In the local town. And then I drive the 10 minutes home to get home. And then it was literally straight to bed for the afternoon. That was my life. It was basically bed and work to pay the bills. And after about 9 months, I went back full time. And I've worked full time then. So from the end of 2010, pretty much ever since. But I had to completely change my life. Yeah. I was able to ski, but really I could do an hour, whereas I'd done a full day before. And I could do the walking, but it took forever and it was really hard work. And I kind of had to build it back up again, and I had to learn I had to relearn what I could and couldn't do in life and adapt life to it. I had to earn money, so that was the no compromise bit. So the bit that had to be compromised was my personal life and my hobbies and everything else. So that was quite challenging mentally as well as physically. Fast forward to 2013, I left France and I moved back to the UK. And by then I was working in hotels, which sounds a bit unbelievable for somebody with my condition, but I kind of found a way around it. But 10 months in the UK, had a nervous breakdown, so we got set back again. So by September 2014, I was 16 stone. I'd put 5 stone on in 4 years. 2 stone over that summer. I had such bad water retention that I could barely bend my arms and legs. My skin felt like it was going to tear. And I was out of a job because I'd had to quit my hotel management job because I just couldn't cope with it. Yeah. It got to the point where I'd put my feet on the ground in the morning and they'd be so painful I would cry.
Oh, Vicky. Vicky, sorry to stop you, but was it the car accident that brought it on? What was the relationship? I don't.
So fibromyalgia, because I've become a bit of a geek about it, it's often triggered by a traumatic event. So it can be triggered by the car crash. That's quite frequent. It can be triggered by something like a really messy divorce, bereavement, a really bad illness. It can be triggered by an operation. All sorts of different things can trigger it. And the back end of my story will sort of tell you a little bit more about how I've learnt about it to get to where I am now, basically.
Okay, I'll let you carry on.
No, that's absolutely fine. But no, it's a condition that if you have it, you know a lot about, but a lot of people don't know that much about it necessarily. But yeah, it can be triggered literally by something normally physically and emotionally traumatic.
I see. Okay.
So fast forward to June 2015. So I was back in work now after the nervous breakdown, and I went to see a really enlightened consultant in Bath, and this was about a family inherited autoimmune issue which I was diagnosed with, which is basically dodgy collagen. So my collagen is a little bit too stretchy, my cells are a bit leaky. It's nothing major, but it can cause chronic pain. And he said to me, he said, look, your medication is as good as it's going to get. The only way you're going to get better is to lose weight and take weight off your joints, to change your diet so that you don't feel fatigued all the time, and to sort your head out.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I can cope with the diet bit. We'll start with that. So in August, we had a big family party, and I went to it for my grandfather's 90th. And everyone was a little bit horrified by the state that I was in. Imagine me 5 stone more than I am now.
Wow.
And looking horrific. So I decided, right, that's it. So I decided to do something called the FODMAP elimination diet, where you cut out long chain sugars that ferment in your gut and can cause inflammation in the body. And a lot of inflammation comes from fibromyalgia, and autoimmune diseases can cause inflammation. So that was the first step, and I decided to do some of these shakes, to get me off it. And by Christmas I'd lost 1 3/4 stone.
Yay, good.
Yay. And I was feeling a whole heap better, which was brilliant. And then the next year I discovered a whole load of new products, and I actually ended up joining that company. And that was a nutritional supplements, but a really, really high level, developed by a guy who basically developed them for his wife who has fibromyalgia. And I kept going with the weight loss and all of that sort of thing, really looking after myself. And I was definitely feeling better. And then through that company, I discovered self-development.
Okay.
An amazing breakthrough. So by now, my outside of work is pretty good. I'm feeling quite good about my weight. Definitely there's an improvement in my health. And I'm starting to work on my brain, mainly because work is hell. And to get through work, this is the only way I can survive. And I had become We were in a toxic situation at work, but I had become a really nasty person with it. I got sucked into all the negativity and the constant whinging and complaining and never seeing the good in anything. And I thought, well, I've got to change. I can't keep going like this. And I changed, but the organisation didn't. And I just knew that something was going to have to give.
Sure.
And that was when I thought, right, I say some really horrible things to myself. I don't really like myself as in a person, a personality. And I invested quite a lot of money to go and do a 3-day success breakthrough course.
Okay.
And I did not go to sort out the fibromyalgia. I went to sort out my head.
Right.
And I walked in with, one of those oversized baggage things that has heavy on it, of emotional baggage from the last 40 odd years. And 3 days later, after a lot of crying, a lot of extreme fatigue, a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of hugs with people I never knew until that weekend, I came out a very different woman on the other end. And off the back of that, the guy that ran the course was running a coaching course to train to be a coach. And I knew I couldn't do it because my boss wouldn't let me have the time off work. And through November and December, work just was the pit, and I knew I had to get out. So I asked for 3 days off to train as a coach. He said no, so I resigned.
Wow.
And that was that. I had a bit of cash in the bank. And that's really been the start of my mental recovery. And I discovered that all of my stress and anxiety and negativity towards life and my anger and everything that was inside me was actually making me physically ill.
Sure.
Because I wasn't talking about it, I hadn't let go of it. And the further I've got down my path as a coach, the better all the health issues have become. And I then started to realize that actually NLP and timeline therapy, which is my strain of coaching, my modalities, has a lot of research around helping chronic illness. So it was kind of I sorted this out, but actually I got all these extra bonus prizes as well, which was brilliant. So by June of last year, I was self-employed. I'd lost 5 stone. I was pretty much feeling fantastic about life. And I was still on my medication. I still had a bit of pain from time to time, but it was pretty, manageable by then. And then I went to do my master practitioner training in Taiwan. And that was an amazing experience. In the end of that, we had to do an intensive 8-hour training session or coaching session with one of the other people on the coach. And the guy taking me through my session was absolutely incredible. And he identified all sorts of stuff that, despite the 2 previous years, was still coming up. But all of the people on the course had been waiting for the moment when I could go through something called pain paradigm, because it was like Vicky was going to get rid of her pain. And we got to that moment and Luke said to me, so pain paradigm. And I said, I'm not in pain anymore. I don't have any pain.
Wow.
And I said, I don't think there's any point in doing it. I don't have any pain. And that was an amazing breakthrough for me. And I basically spent since March of this year until a month ago weaning myself off my pain medication, which I am now off, and I am no longer in any pain at all.
Oh my goodness. So, well done.
It's been a roller coaster. I've kept my weight off, so I'm still 11 stone. I eat healthily. I feed my body lots of supplements. I feed my brain lots of amazing stuff. And it's transformed my life completely and utterly in a way that I never thought would be possible. And on top of it, I've got an amazing business out of it. And I now help other people do the same thing.
Wow. That's very cool. Very cool. Goodness me, like you say, a real roller coaster of a ride with having that accident and then obviously being diagnosed with fibromyalgia. That's crazy. I didn't know that you could sort of get it that way, and then have to deal with it for all that time. I can't believe you went back to work, to be honest. So when you were saying about getting to work and then sleeping in your car, and I thought, crikey, there's a lot of people that wouldn't have done that, you know?
I think I'm a lot of the types of people that end up with fibromyalgia are because they're very strong, driven, independent, predominantly women who don't want to be seen as weak. So don't admit when things aren't quite right and keep pushing through. My other thing was that I had a mortgage and I had bills to pay, and anything I would get from the state in France wouldn't cover that. So my only option if I didn't go back to work would be to sell my apartment and move in with my parents at the age of 35.
Right. Okay.
And if I went back to the UK, it would be a very similar setting. There was no financial backup. So I just had to push myself through it and find ways of managing it. And, you know, I did end up with some fairly full-on jobs and I found ways of managing it. But actually, God, I could manage them so much better now than I did then.
Yeah, sure.
So,
sure.
yeah.
So knowing what you know now, what would your advice be to someone that's just been diagnosed with fibromyalgia? If you could do things differently, knowing what you know now, what would you do first?
So I was in a privileged position that the label inverted commas was added at the beginning. So what happens in this country, unfortunately, is that people start to have the chronic pain and the fatigue, and it can take up to 2 or 3 years to be actually diagnosed as fibromyalgia. And during that time, you're not necessarily being treated for it. So it's a tricky one. But I think anybody that's in a position where they either have it already or they are struggling with life in general for no particular reason, I cannot explain the benefits of a healthy diet and a healthy mind enough.
Right.
I did a lot of counselling. That didn't help me because it kind of reinforced the problems. The thing I love about what I do now is it's all about what I want and looking towards the future and solving problems. And I think it's very difficult when you're in that situation. You feel completely hopeless when you really at rock bottom. When I was bedbound for that month, I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to live the rest of my life? I am 34 years old.
Right.
And it's about not giving up hope. It's about choosing to be open-minded and explore every possibility that's out there. You know, some people choose not to take medication. I had to take medication to survive.
Right.
I'm now trying to come off the medication. But it's about looking at homeopathy. It's about looking at everything that's alternative that's out there and finding what's right for you.
Right.
And it's not easy, and there is an element of cost involved to it. But I think the 2 biggest things is cut sugar out of your diet.
Okay.
And I know that sounds really, really hard, but if you love yourself and you want your life back, it's a sacrifice worth making.
Okay.
And the other thing is invest in your mind. You know, learn positive thinking. It doesn't have to be expensive. There are relatively inexpensive ways to get started, but really invest in yourself personally and learn to understand your mind and how it works.
Brilliant. I love that advice. I'm all about that, and especially just sort of to plug the GLAD game. It is about doing something every day, trying to turn situations round, even in the smallest way. You know, if you
Absolutely.
can get good habits of doing small adjustments, and they all add up for when you really need to be in a situation to cope with a difficult situation. So I love that advice, and I'm an addict of self-help type books, but personal development is the better thing to call them, really, rather than self-help. And I think unfortunately that's why people maybe don't invest in buying books like that, because they worry what people will think. But actually knowing and understanding the way your mind works is such a benefit, because you then recognize the scenario for what it is, and you can say, okay, I feel like this because of that, and I know it's not going to last forever. What else can I do that's going to make me feel more upbeat? So Brilliant.
So if I could recommend 2 books to people, the first self-development book that I'm a listener, I love Audible. So the first one that I listened to was called The Untethered Soul.
Oh yeah.
And it's absolutely wonderful book, and it's all about understanding yourself better and not being afraid of change, and about the way that you see the world and different people see the world. Absolutely loved it. And then the second one is a bit more geeky, sciencey. If you are into the connection between the mind and the body and how you're feeling, it's by a guy, excuse me, my lighting's just gone. It's by a guy called Dr. John Sarno, and it's called The Divided Mind. And it's absolutely fascinating. He is a surgeon and a medic in America, and he's done a lot of research into the connection between what's happening in our body and our mind, very specifically based around chronic illnesses.
Oh, fab. Okay, I'll have to look that one up because I haven't heard about that one before. Fab, thank you. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you want to tell me about, or tell me a bit more about your business and what services you offer? Is it just coaching? I know you do NLP.
So I'm essentially, I work with business people,
Right.
and I work around the area of emotional intelligence, reducing stress, increasing productivity, communicating with confidence, getting what you want, that sort of area. And then, as somebody described it last night, which I thought was wonderful, my passion project, which is sort of my side project, is working with people with chronic illness. So at any one time, I coach 2 people with chronic illness who aren't able to work for free. And I also run classes. I've just launched the next year's ones. With another coach who has had a similar journey to myself, we run sort of one-day workshops in our local area for people with chronic illness to sort of start to learn about how mastering their mind can really have positive benefits for them.
Oh, fantastic. That's awesome. I love that you're doing some coaching for people that can't afford it, because as you know, I totally believe in the value that coaching brings to a relationship. And you mentioned it earlier, it's about looking forward rather than looking backwards. Not that, you know, I think analysing the past can have its benefits to a degree, but also I'm more of the positive mindset, move forward, you know, and that kind of thing. So brilliant. Well, please send me the links and I'll share them underneath this video so that people can find you. But thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for letting me share the story. And you know, the more we can get out there to the world and let people know there are options. It's not the end of the world, a diagnosis. It's just the start of a different pathway.
Exactly. Thank you so much. If you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button, and hit the little bell as well, because then you'll get a notification when new videos are uploaded. If you've got a story you'd like to share, please do get in touch. It doesn't matter if it's something similar to what somebody else has shared, because I really do believe your story in your voice has the ability to help someone in their time of need. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. If you search @BeGladMovement, you should be able to find us. And I look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.